Hey, weapons!
What?
Easy mode's now selectable.
Oh, fuck off. Devil May Cry 3 came out in 2005 for PS2 and 2006 for PC. In that same year, it also got an updated Special Edition. The Special Edition allowed you to play the story again as Virgil instead of Dante, the difficulty was toned down a bit, Bloody Palace, which is like a tournament mode, was added, and you could now view past cutscenes from the main menu, and a new story boss was also added. The Special Edition was re-released as part of the Devil May Cry HD collection for 7th and 8th gen consoles, and specifically the Switch version, which came out in 2020, added even more features, unfortunately exclusive to the Switch, but there was now a freestyle mode where you could play and switch styles in the middle of gameplay instead of before missions or at shops. You could also equip all devil arms at once in this mode, and you could run the Bloody Palace with a friend in local co-op mode. Local multiplayer in current year? Is this a dream? Now, as most of you probably already know if you saw my previous video regarding Devil May Cry, DMC2 was pretty bad, but I'm happy to say that Devil May Cry 3 is not only a great return to form, but it completely blows the previous two games out of the water in terms of both narrative quality and gameplay, and it's not even close. The game might even make my Hall of Fame for one of my favorite games of all time. It was that good. It takes place about a decade before Devil May Cry 1, so despite its name, it's actually a prequel to the first game. It looks like they got the memo about Dante being too brooding in 2 as well, because he's back to his old self in 3. Well, I guess his younger self, technically, but you get the idea. Dante's been butting heads with his twin brother, Virgil, for quite some time now, and Virgil's latest scheme involves him and his buddy, a man named Arkham, unearthing a massive tower which can open a door to the demon realm. Yes, we're doing this again. Literally the third time in a row. So the majority of the game is Dante exploring the tower and trying to reach the top in an attempt to thwart his brother's plan. Gameplay-wise, like I said, it's leaps and bounds better than 1, and especially 2. Dante has his melee weapon along with some guns. The style ranking returns, where you're graded for how well you can do combos without getting hit, and there's even a meter under the word now so you can see how close you are to the next rank. The game also introduces a style system, not to be confused with the aforementioned letter grades. These are special actions that are mapped to your circle or B button, depending on what you're playing on, that Dante can use depending on which one you have equipped. And they level up as well, so each style will acquire more actions as you level. So you start out with 4, Trickster, which adds a pretty useful evasive dash, you're invincible while you're moving, and you can perform it in any direction. Swordmaster adds additional melee attacks, which opens up more combo variety and a more offensive playstyle. Gunslinger frees up your gun mobility a bit, so it's good if you prefer range combat, although in my opinion this is probably the least useful style, as I used guns mainly for prolonging combos and not my main form of attacking. Royal Guard is the hardest to use, but the most powerful if you can get it right. Holding the button down will cause you to take reduced damage if you get hit, though keep in mind that enemies can break it if they get enough hits in. If you block right before an attack connects though, you'll take no damage and enemies will even stagger from it. Then you'll be able to perform counter moves if you perfect guard it enough times, and the counter becomes stronger as you level it up. It's a bit awkward for group fights, but against bosses where you're required to read their movements anyway, this is pretty damn broken. There are 2 more styles that you get as you progress through the story, but they're a bit spoilery, so I'll talk about them later. And like I said, the Switch version does have a freestyle mode that lets you switch between the styles instantly, because normally you'd have to go to a statue or finish the mission before you can change it. Another thing, devil arms and guns can be switched on the fly, including mid-combo. You're allowed 2 guns and 2 devil arm melee weapons. You could do this switching in Devil May Cry 2 as well, but only with the guns because, if you recall, the only devil arm that was available in 2 anyways was the sword. Actually, speaking of which, I guess they really did want to make up for the fact that there weren't any others in 2, because 3 has a whole bunch of them. Again, spoilers, so I'll talk about them later, even though the game is almost 20 years old, so I don't really think anyone cares about it at this point, but just in case. Oh look, dodging all those spoilers for so long, but we're about to talk about the stories anyway, so spoilers ahead. If you're still here, I'm assuming you've either played the game already or you don't care, so let's get on with it. And I can't say I'd blame you for not really caring, because the story, while it's good, isn't very long, and excluding the boss characters, only features 4 people.
You mean 5?
No, just 4. Having a microscopic cast actually meant that no one got shafted as far as development is concerned, and it does a really good job overall at expounding on the dangling plot threads that Devil May Cry 1 introduced but didn't really do anything with. For example, Trish mentioning that Mundus killed Dante's mom and brother, Dante unlocking Devil Trigger in Devil May Cry 1 strictly during gameplay but no explanation being given as to how he learned it in the first place, etc. As I said before, Dante himself is a lot younger in this one, so he's pretty carefree for the majority of the game, especially considering it's losing Virgil at the end of this game that caused his more somber nature to settle in by the time 1 and 2 take place. Up until that point though, he mostly saw this entire adventure as little more than just a game. Even the more serious moments are still peppered in with plenty of quips and jokes as Dante generally just takes on life with a chuckle. If you pay attention to some of the vocal battle music in the game, namely Taste the Blood, Divine Hate, and the boss themes for Cerberus and Beowulf, at first I thought it was the game talking down to you in an attempt to intimidate you, but it's actually how Dante views his opponents. Every boss, save for Virgil, are in canon so easy to him that he intentionally toys with them and drags it out just to make it more fun, hence why the series' staple mechanic isn't just about killing enemies, but how good you can look while doing it. And speaking of killing enemies, I guess I can finally talk about the other devil arms besides the sword. Defeating Cerberus early on gives you an ice-powered nunchuck. Funnily enough, you do fight him very early, like Mission 3 early, and he serves as a sort of literal and figurative gatekeeper to the rest of the game, when you really think about it, because I'm gonna tell you that difficulty spike was no joke. Agni and Rudra, my two personal favorites, both as characters and as a weapon, provide twin swords imbued with fire and wind. Nevin yields a literal electric guitar, which is good for group fights, and Beowulf is basically this game's light-based version of Ifrit. It's the sort of, gauntlet-style punch and kick the shit out of the demons until they fall over kind of weapon, though you don't get it right away. There are two other item bosses, so to speak, but they give you new styles instead of new weapons. Gurion gives you a style called Quicksilver, which allows you to stop time at the cost of Devil Trigger, and Doppelganger also gives you a style called, Doppelganger. It creates a clone that will help you fight by mimicking your attacks, and this also costs Devil Trigger.
Foolishness, Dante.
This game finally does get you well acquainted with Virgil, since if you played in release order, your first introduction to him would have been as Nilo Angelo, and him turning out to be Virgil was a plot twist near the end of the game. But of course, here you get to meet his authentic, not so brainwashed self. And he couldn't be any more different from Dante despite them being twins. He does look exactly like Dante though. The hair makes it hard to tell, but just wait for it to start raining. Dante is loud and boisterous. Virgil is quiet and restrained. Dante has a Western-style greatsword. Virgil has an Eastern-style katana. Dante is initially ashamed of his lineage and clings to his human side. Virgil is proud of his lineage and embraces his demonic side. Dante toys with his enemies. Virgil kills them quickly. Dante wears red. Virgil wears blue.
Okay, we get it.
Arkham is certainly a person, for lack of a better term.
He's the most vile kind of creature!
So he's the other major antagonist in this game, and as his normal self, he guides Virgil to unearthing the tower and unlocking the portal, and he uses his alter ego, Jester, to lead Dante on as well. Yes, he and the clown are the same guy. Like Virgil, Arkham was also obsessed with gaining strength, so much so that he killed many people over the course of countless experiments in an attempt to become the devil himself, among those being his own wife, and the daughter he left behind now hates him for it. That person being Mary Arkham, or Lady, as she abandoned her former name and Dante accidentally gave her another one. As I said before, she's at the tower trying to kill Arkham, and I like how her father's actions have really affected how she views Dante and Virgil. She meets Dante for the first time, shoots him in the head when he starts getting on her nerves, and once she realizes he can just shrug that off, she concludes that, oh no, he's a demon as well. And this leads to a pretty heated conversation / fight around the game's halfway point where she straight up asks Dante what does he know about family, not yet realizing that despite his origins, they have a lot more in common than she initially thought, and admits at the end of the game that even humans, like Arkham, are capable of being just as vile as any demon could be perceived to be. But I do think she stands out all the more so being the only character who's both completely human and doesn't rely on magic or any supernatural tools to fight. She just carries 3 guns and ammo. Lots and lots of ammo. Outside of all that, the plot is pretty straightforward. Missions are short, you fight a boss every few missions, and it's worth noting you fight Virgil 3 times. Each time you fight him, it closes out a major segment of the game. The first fight with Virgil happens when Dante reaches the top of the tower for the first time. It ends with Virgil defeating Dante, and then Dante unlocks Devil Trigger for the first time. The second fight happens inside of the tower's ritual chamber, where Virgil attempts to open the door to the demon realm before he's interrupted by Dante, and then both of them are interrupted by Lady, and then all 3 of them are interrupted by Arkham, who opens the door himself and acquires the power of Sparta. And then Virgil's fought a 3rd time as the final boss. Before that, we do need to back up a little bit though. Like I said, Arkham wanted more strength, and then the reason he wanted the portal open to begin with was so he could obtain Sparta's powers specifically. As I said, he led on Dante, Virgil, and Lady to accomplish this. He needed both halves of the amulet from the two brothers, their blood, and then Lady's blood, because he also needed the blood of a priestess to get in, and Lady's mom happened to be one, if I recall that correctly. Once that was all done, Arkham ascended to Hell. Wait, whoa, that doesn't sound too right. I thought Hell was the other way. Anyway, Arkham gets there and he takes Sparta's power for himself, turning into Sparta's insectoid-looking demon form. Although it's pretty funny, he couldn't control it. By the time Dante catches up to him, Arkham ends up morphing into this gooey blob slime thing. Man, really let himself go, huh? And then Virgil, of all people, actually shows up to help Dante take Arkham down, at the hefty cost of your style ability and your devil trigger gauge. Needy ass motherfucker. The following cutscene itself was glorious though. Just put it into perspective for a second. If you fucked up so badly that Dante and Virgil actually agree on something, I don't know what to tell you. So Arkham literally gets BTFO'd out of Hell, and Lady conveniently runs into him and finishes the job. Unfortunately, Dante's job still isn't done, because Virgil still wants Sparta's power for himself. He has his half of the amulet along with Sparta's sword that Arkham dropped, and he just needs Dante's half of the amulet. So of course the two end up fighting, again. This is by and far one of the best and most emotional final bosses I've ever experienced in a game. And when I say emotional, it wasn't because of the story or the music or anything like that. It was me resisting the urge to not spike my controller because of how hard this man was. Pause. Like most bosses that are roughly Dante's size, Royal Guard will probably work best if you can get the timing right. Unlike his second phase, he also has a damn near permanent devil trigger. So before you could kind of just wait him out and then go back on the offensive, but here you have to actually man up and knock the devil trigger out of him, ideally with your own devil trigger. After that, Virgil falls off the edge of the waterfall, saying that he doesn't mind staying in Hell because it'll remind him of his dad. Then Dante goes back to the mortal world to meet up with Lady. Also, shout out to the end credits. It lets you kill some demons while it scrolls along, so at least they were considerate enough to make sure you didn't get bored. And then they officially open up Devil May Cry as a business, and then the game ends. But wait! There's more! So after you beat the game for the first time, you unlock hard mode, you unlock the Bloody Palace, which is the tournament mode I mentioned earlier, a couple outfit swaps for Dante, and most notably, the ability to start a new game over again as Virgil. Now before you get too excited, outside of a few bonus cutscenes that add context to Virgil's point of view, the story, levels, and bosses are all still the same. You're just running through them again as Virgil. Even the parts of the game where Dante and Virgil meet and fight, you're still fighting a palette-swapped Virgil. I do wish they had kind of gone that extra mile and just had you fight a computer-controlled Dante instead, but it is what it is, I guess. You know, playable Virgil is already a pretty big bonus, so I'll let it slide. Virgil doesn't have the same stuff as Dante either. He only has one style, Dark Slayer, which allows him to teleport towards, above, or around enemies as you level it up. He also has the same 3 devil arms that he had during the story. Yamato, his standard katana, the Beowulf gauntlets, since he actually acquired those before Dante did, and Sparta's sword, Force Edge, which he uses in conjunction with his katana, but it's treated like its own weapon. He keeps this toolkit for the entire campaign. Apart from Beowulf, he doesn't earn all the other weapons and styles that you'd get from each of the major demons in the tower. You can run the Bloody Palace with him as well, though I'd recommend finishing a playthrough with him first, as whatever upgrades you unlock carry over into that mode as well. But that is pretty much all I have to say about Devil May Cry 3. Like I said, it was bar none the best game in the series so far. As of this video, I'm actually almost done with 4, so I'll probably start working on the review for that soon too. But for now, this will mark the end of the video, so you guys know what to do. Leave a like if you enjoyed it, sub to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you all again very soon.